Hello and welcome to the SPYSHACK Podcast, a podcast where Survivor superfans get together to talk about the latest episode of Survivor. Tonight, we will be talking about episode 9, titled Fear of the Unknown. I am, once again, your substitute host. I'm Randy. I am joined by one of our usual co-hosts. Kim, how are you doing today? And give us one word to describe the episode.
I'm doing okay. It was a difficult day for me. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I always have to say I love and I miss my son every day. And my word for the episode, oh gosh, I hate this part, was enjoyable. I can't think of one.
Okay. And today, subbing in, we have Doug with us, one of our normal listeners, commenters. Doug will be joining us, and we get to hear him give his comments today. Doug, How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on. I can just actually shout at you now instead of all captioning at you.
What is your one word that you would use to describe this episode?
I think my one word for this episode would probably be fumble.
I like it. Well, I would probably give the word unnecessary, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But as we go, we'll jump right into it. We start the episode off at camp the next day after Tribal Council. Mike understands that he needs to sacrifice the other healers in order to survive. Lauren and Ben celebrate her usage of the extra vote and that they're keeping it between the two of them. And then we see Ryan tell Devin about his idol. What did you guys think about these scenes here?
I thought it was good of Mike to realize that he needs to sacrifice basically Cole and Joe to go further in his game. They don't have the numbers, and he's last on that totem pole of getting rid of. So if he can get in with them, maybe later on he can get some of them to flip on each other if he's willing to sacrifice one of his own. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I thought this was, as the episode was beginning, an encouraging scene. Because I did think that Mike was in one of the best positions in the game. And I thought this was a good thing to hear him say.
I agree. I think he had the right idea here at the beginning of the episode, and we'll get into more of that later. But also in this scene, I really enjoyed the Lauren and Ben dynamic. I am very much not a Ben fan. I've said that multiple times, and this episode encouraged that even further. But I really liked the way that Lauren kind of went up to him and really said, hey, we're good, right? This is between us. We pulled that off. And she really kind of, the way that she worded it is, I want him to feel like this is our advantage to keep us tied together. And I really, really like that. And then in a similar scene, we have Ryan and Devin, where Ryan tells Devin about the idol. And Ryan does this in order to kind of make Devin dependent on him, as he says. So we have two different people playing an advantage that they have in the game in a way to build relationships, but in kind of a little bit of different ways. One more in a team building way and one more in a dependence way. What do you guys think about this difference between these two advantages and how they use them?
For Lauren, I thought it was great. I thought that she has a great grasp on this game, and her relationship with Ben is really good. They have a pretty strong alliance because, as we see later on, when Ryan tells Ben about the idol, Ben tells someone. But Ben doesn't tell anyone about Lauren's advantage. So I don't know. And I think Doug is disagreeing with me.
No. I'm not. I think it's such an interesting juxtaposition of those two scenes, right? Because you see two different situations where you can use an advantage to your benefit. And if Lauren's usage of her advantage works out, it means that codependence thing is exactly how she meant for it to be. Because if you can have one person that knows about your advantage that won't tell anybody else, that's perfect because they have a secret too. And even though you're the one who told it to them, you can kind of use it against them if you play it right. And then you see the other one, which obviously we'll get to, kind of goes in a completely different route. So it's interesting to see both of them get set up and then see them play out very differently.
I agree. I think that's a good point because that's what I saw with these two, is that these are two very different strategic standpoints that you can go when you have an advantage in the game. And I know this is early on in the game and we haven't seen them actually use their advantages yet. But for me, Lauren's ahead of the game right now. Lauren's winning this in the way that she used it. instead of just telling someone, hey, this is my advantage that I have now, so you probably want to be on my team, kind of like what Ryan did with Devin.
But do you think that, and you know I'm a Ryan fan, but do you think that Ryan's relationship with Devin is just different than Lauren's relationship with Ben? So that's how his relationship with Devin works.
Well, and I think that goes along with what we're saying, is that's the way Ryan has built that relationship, is that I'm the alpha here and you need to follow what I do because I have the idol. And that's what he did at the beginning too, when he originally started with Devin, when he found the day one idol.
And he's a weasel, and he's an admitted weasel. I still think that Ryan is playing a good game. A little bit of maybe a mistake with Ben, but we'll get to that. But all in all, he's still not a target yet. He might be one, but not right yet. So I think that Lauren handled it better than Ryan, but I don't know. Go ahead, Doug. You were going to say something.
No, it's wild that Ryan's not a target. I think if you would have expected one of those advantage confessions or whatever to play out in a tight-knit way, it would have been Ryan and Devin. And so it's funny that it was the opposite of that.
Especially since Devin flat out says, this is between the two of us. No one's ever finding out about this. He makes that point very clear. And then Ryan goes around and turns that the other way. Those of you guys in the chat, let us know your thoughts on this. Let us know if you agree, disagree, or have a completely different viewpoint here. So as we move on through the episode, we get to the reward challenge. In this challenge, they split into 2 groups of 5. 3 members must swim, climb a ladder, jump into the water to untie a buoy, and then eventually the team has to make 5 basketball shots. The prize is sandwiches on a yacht. Thought that was not a bad prize. We'll get to that in a little bit. So the way this challenge broke down, I was impressed with Chrissy off the bat. She hustled to put the red team into the lead. She swam really well. She untied the buoy, really got ahead of Ben at the beginning of it. The real impressive one was actually JP. I hate to give JP too much credit because really this is the only thing he does is challenges. But JP dives in and unties the buoy on one breath, which was pretty impressive the way he did it. But the red team ended up pulling this one out with JP, Chrissy, Cole, Joe, and Mike. What did you guys think of this reward challenge?
I loved it. I mean, it's been kind of done before, but I like these challenges. I think they're fun. I think that it looked like a lot of them were pretty good. Ashley was great. Chrissy, JP. I liked that they sat Joe and Mike out because Joe just learned how to swim, so I definitely would not have put him in the swimming challenge, and he fared well with the tossing of the basketballs. He did really, really good with that. So I liked the challenge, and I thought the reward was pretty cool. I mean, I never get the drinking because I wouldn't drink if I'm starving. I don't need that alcohol in my system, but food when you're starving is always good.
What about you, Doug? Any thoughts on this one?
Not really, to be totally honest. I'm not anti-challenge, but I watched this episode twice and struggled so hard to pay attention because I was like, well, I don't want to miss anything, but I didn't think there was a whole lot to miss. I will say the final shootout, though, I thought was really, really cool. I love that it came down to Ben and Joe. The more we can see Ben versus Joe, I think the happier I will get because I think that's fun. So I did like the end of it a lot.
I always like challenges that kind of have stages where you can definitely see how things are progressing. I thought this was a good ending. Usually we end in a puzzle for something like this, but this one was more fun because it's something you can visibly see. Puzzles don't work very well on the show for the audience. So I thought this was a fun way to end it. And then honestly, on the prize, the actual reward, not much happened on the yacht. We see Cole talking about getting more food because he needs it to win challenges, which he makes a good point that he has won every challenge except for one in the season, which is impressive. The only one he lost was the one that Desi won for her immunity. And then we see Joe searching everywhere for an idol. I love that he searched through the cake because I jokingly tweeted it. I was like, oh, I bet there's an idol in that cake. And then right when I say that, Joe starts cutting through that cake. So I thought that was a lot of fun seeing him unapologetically searching for for an idol or a clue. And then we see everyone back at camp come out to visit to see the boat and cheer for them as they go by. I thought that was a fun little like personality moment that we don't get to see very often.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I love that Joe just doesn't care. He's like, I'm looking for the idol. I need it, and he's not fake. I know that Joe takes sometimes Joe's hard to like, but like I said, you can be a villain without being an a-hole, and that's the difference between Joe and Russell.
What's so great about Joe right now is that he can afford to not care. Like I think a big reason we're getting so much of what we get from Joe is because he has nothing to lose at this point. Like there's no footing for him to lose. He can just go absolutely bonkers. There's no political capital for him to miss out on because everybody's already looking at him. So we get such great scenes from Joe. I'm not a Joe fan, but he's great TV.
Yeah, I definitely didn't like Joe a few weeks ago. Joe has grown on me on the show. I'm not a fan of Joe on Twitter.
Oh, me neither.
I get real annoyed with that. But Joe on the show, and I think you make a very valid point here, is that Joe is able to be crazy and wild because he can't go anywhere else but down. But up because he's already way at the bottom with no footing. No one likes him, so he might as well try something. So I agree with that one completely.
Yeah, it Joe made the reward fun. Other than that, it was boring, and Chrissy was like, I'm going to control the conversation. I'm like, oh my God, Chrissy.
She makes some comments. Like,
shut up.
She makes some comments like, I'd rather be here with my friends, but at least I can control the conversation. I didn't really like that, but
no. Yeah. We're not Chrissy fans. I don't know if you are, Doug, but Randy and I are not.
I love me some Chrissy.
Do you really?
Oh yeah. I would be thrilled with a Chrissy win. It's been a slow burn, but I think the anti-Chrissy movement just fuels it more. So it's a
if Chrissy wins, she played a good game. So I won't feel that oh my God, she didn't deserve to win. She's played a good game. I mean, to be honest, there's a whole lot more older castaways left that we thought would be left in the beginning. Yeah. Nobody thought Lauren, Dr. Mike, Chrissy, and Ryan, even though he's not older, would still be here.
I still am baffled none of you took Mike. I don't know why people were sleeping on Mike. Like, up until today, or not today, up until this episode, he was in such a great position. I know it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, but we're talking pre-show.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
A few episodes, Mike is a great pick, but pre-show, I
thought you were all crazy.
No way I thought he was staying. I mean, I thought he was going before jury.
So then after the reward back at camp, we see Ryan tell Ben that he has an idol in his pants. What did you guys, was that a good move for Ryan to tell Ben?
I don't totally get it. I heard what he was saying. I heard his explanation. I was not buying his cookies though. Like I didn't understand his logic entirely. It didn't seem like the most logical person to try to go to. I think Ben is somebody that everybody's already identifying as somebody who has a lot of strings to pull. Yeah. So I don't understand why you'd give him another one, especially if you're somebody like Ryan, who very clearly wants to have the most strings. I don't get
exactly. It. I think that's the key, is that Ryan loses a lot of his power when he gives it to someone like that already has a lot of power on the other side. Once they get to 7, he knows that him and Ben aren't going to be on the right side, or at least he should know that. They're not going to be on the same side together. But I don't know. So then we also see Joe still digging for the idol in the thing. Like, I thought this was fun. So seeing him just like laying there, like gently, like combing through the sand still days later, thinking that it's going to be there, even though he has
given up, man. He don't give up.
He has no clue that says that he didn't see the plate. So he just saw other people digging there and thinks, I might as well keep digging. Mm-hmm. But then after that, Joe comes up on Mike, Ashley, and Chrissy talking about him, and they stop. And Joe gets pretty defensive about that. And a fight ensues between him and Ashley. He calls Ashley a goat. She obviously doesn't appreciate that. And they have a little argument at the shelter. What do you guys think about this here? Is Ashley a goat at this point in time? Who was overreacting here?
I think that Joe, this is who Joe is. He said in confessional what he's doing. he's trying to make it so people dislike him and they drag him to the end. Because we, at the end of the episode, this is basically what we saw. So I think Ashley, instead of giving what Joe wants, don't give it back. You know what he's trying to do, and just don't give it back. You are fueling his fire when you respond back to him.
I agree with the sentiment, but what's interesting and where I would slightly disagree is that Ashley then said, like, let's just get rid of him then. Like, we all see what he's trying to do. He's obnoxious. And if Ashley had her way, Joe's plan would have completely backfired, and being obnoxious would have actually gotten him voted out.
Right, and she knows what he's doing, but she doesn't have the power right now to do it. If
Joe said that to anyone that people respected on the island, something would have happened there. But no one looks at Ashley as more than just a vote. And besides JP, and JP's the same way. So I think the two of them are just kind of on their own little island here. But we did see Ashley start to kind of rise up a little bit this episode.
I think she's I could see very easily her being in a Michelle Fitzgerald position where she just at the very end, surrounded by a bunch of people doing a bunch of dumb stuff, makes the right moves and hasn't really pissed anybody off all that much. You know, like,
she's got to be more likable to pull off Michelle.
So, well, but I don't know that she's not. I don't know that we ever saw Michelle being especially over the top likable. You know, like,
I didn't think Michelle was. And I'm still bitter about that win. I'll be bitter about that win for my life.
I like Michelle a lot, and after the show, I can see it, right? I follow her on social media. I can see exactly where people liked her, but I did have to be sort of sold on that because I don't think we necessarily saw it. I don't know if Ashley is unlikable enough to not be in that position, but it's hard until we see a result, which stinks.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. But then after this, we see Ben and Devin walking to the woods, trying to connect to each other. They both kind of have identified the other one as someone somewhat on the other side that they want to connect with and trust. And Ben tells Devin that Ryan has an idol. And Devin's mind basically explodes. They're sitting on the side of the mountain. Out of this, so with this scenario with Ben and Ryan and Devin and the idols, who's the big winner? And I think obviously we all think the big loser is probably Ryan, but who's the big winner out of this? Who gains the most power and the most clarity?
I'm going to say Devin. I think that Ben already has that target. I think that at the end of the day, I still think Devin's closer to Ryan. And I think that Ryan would be able to pull Devin back in and flip on Ben more than Ben would get Devin to flip on Ryan, but I do think Devin comes out the winner.
Do you think the Ben-Devin discussion was honest for both of them, Doug?
I think honest for both of them. I think Devin handled it perfectly. I think Devin acted surprised. I think he was surprised, but I think he plays that up to make sure that Ben believes that he has no idea. And I think I don't know. I mean, it's hard to believe that that's honest and that they are going to somehow now be this tight-knit pair. I don't think that's the case. But I do think they now have this mutual thing. And I think Devin, I agree with Kim. I think Devin comes out on top because Ben is going to use it wrong, I think. You know, like Devin will sit on it and Ben will try to use it, and Ben doesn't know how to use it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Is Devin going to 24 days in completely change his whole game because of this one conversation?
No.
That's kind of what the show tried to make us think. So that'll be
think so. Because you didn't see anything after. You didn't see anyone trying to maybe flip it on Ryan. That didn't happen. So I think Devin told Ben what he wanted to hear. I do think Devin is hurt by Ryan. But again, he has this relationship with Ryan for 24 days, even though they were separated for a while. He does not have that relationship with Ben. And I don't see him flipping on Ryan completely because all he did was tell Ben about an idol. He didn't completely betray Devin.
But
Well,
if Devin knows how to use it correctly, he can do something where he continues to work with Ryan and has this in his back pocket. And if Devin can continue to be a collector of bits and pieces of information against Ryan, then we could see sort of this is an extreme comparison, but a JT and Steven type situation where JT doesn't have to do a whole lot to really throw Steven under the bus. If Devin has this little collection of things, he could do something similar. People seem to like him plenty.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But I think that'll happen like in 2 weeks or so.
When we saw this preview, I really kind of expected this to backfire on Ben. When we saw the preview last week and kind of thinking about how things were going, we knew that Ryan told Devin, Ryan told Ben, and then Ben told Devin. I really thought that Devin was going to go back to Ryan and they were going to say, oh, Ben's blabbing to people. He's telling people about your idol. That's where I thought this episode was going to go.
I did too.
I didn't really think Ben was going to go home because the majority, but I really thought it was going to put a target on Ben.
But still might.
That's not where it went yet. So then after this, we head to the immunity challenge. And as I posted on Twitter, this challenge was called Squatty Probst. Not named after Jeff. It was named after Jeff's brother, who I guess used to work. He used to work as a producer on the show or somewhere within the show. But that is what they named this episode, where basically you sit in this weird torture device and have to squat for as long as you can. And it looked miserable.
I would have been out in about 20 seconds.
Exactly.
I have bad knees. There's no
production was very meticulous about this beforehand because everyone was measured based on their height and their size and everything. So everyone's was set up custom for them based on their size. So that it's not just buy one, you get whatever's out there. But you had to balance an urn from a squatting position. People tend to fall out pretty quickly in this one. Then after 20 minutes, we're down to Chrissy, Cole, Lauren, and Ryan. This is not the 4 people I would have expected on this.
Absolutely not.
I really thought Ashley would be better than she was in this, and she was the first one out.
I think it was a fluke. She seemed shocked.
Chrissy fall, then Ryan fall, and then eventually Cole's urn falls over at the end. And Lauren Rimmer wins immunity this episode. Didn't think I would ever see this, really, at the beginning of the season. I have definitely become a Lauren fan. I really like her no-nonsense. I really like the way that she's playing this game. And this was a nice win for her to put on her resume that I think hopefully will help her later down the road. But what did you guys think of this immunity challenge? What did you think of Lauren's win and all of that?
I love this challenge, mostly because it's new and we haven't seen it before. But I loved it. If I look at a challenge and I think to myself, I want to try that, I think I might actually be okay at that, I'm excited about it. It's this is almost like a less macho version of like the weight holding challenge. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was cool to see that. I love that Lauren won it. I love that this season seems to be going the route of co-wrong, where we don't see one single dominant force in challenges. Everybody kind of gets a taste of the pie. And just in general, I love Lauren so much.
Well, that brings up my next question. Is the immunity idol cursed? Is it cursed? Because right now we are seeing someone win the immunity and then immediately go home the next week. We've seen it with Desi. We've seen it with Cole. Will we see it with Lauren? Is it cursed, or is this too early to tell?
I don't think it's cursed. I don't think that Lauren is a target right now. I don't think she's close to being a target. I particularly liked this challenge. It didn't have like excitement where, you had the reward challenge with the basketball throws and everything, but it was different. And I liked that it was something we've never seen. I would have been awful. I would not have lasted more than 20, 30 seconds.
The one thing I didn't like about it is that it wasn't as easy to tell if someone was about to lose. Some of them, like, you can see someone teetering on the edge, or see their statue that they're trying to hold up getting close to the edge and about to fall, or see it wobbling. This one, you don't really see it till they're out.
I know who I thought was going to win this. I thought JP was going to win this.
Yeah, I think JP thought he was going to win that.
Because of the fact that he's a firefighter, he lifts. This is stuff he does. And I think, was it JP that lost the urn when Ashley spoke to Chrissy and said, "Oh, you're doing good"?
That was Devin and Joe.
That was Devin and Joe. Okay.
One thing I really liked about this episode was I think ultimately it was a pretty straightforward episode when you shave away a lot of the stuff that we watched. And so as a result of that, I think we saw all these little tiny social interactions we don't normally see. So some of it was just fun, right? Like the mooning the boat. But then some of it was this stuff during the challenge where you hear them talking to each other where we don't normally get to hear them talking to each other, and things at camp and whatnot. And so there's like a lot to dissect with the little social pieces. The Cole stuff was obvious, right? They're rooting for Lauren because they want Cole to lose, but that wasn't the only commentary from the bench.
No, I agree completely. I think this was a very straightforward episode that they kind of tried to make it not seem straightforward at the end, but but when you take away a lot of the layers, it really was pretty straightforward. And I think this immunity challenge was a good part of that. And I think you make a very good point about all these character moments that we're seeing.
It'll be fun to dissect in retrospect. I think we're probably getting information for the future.
I love seeing the strategy. And I think that's what this whole season has been, is I think this whole season really is building to a strong finish. Because we're seeing all these interactions and we're seeing, and this will be a question that I'm going to bring up later, but we really see a lot of interesting interactions. And I'm going to put a pin in that one right there. So then after that immunity, we're going to go back to camp. And Ben has decided that Cole is the target and we are splitting with Dr. Mike. And that is what Ben says. And he does not care what you say. And Ashley does not like that. Ashley is very upset that we are letting Joe get away with this. So he's just off the board now. We're not targeting him. And she kind of has a bad reaction to that one. What do you guys think of the way that Ben approached this and the way that Ashley reacted?
I'm a big fan of Ben, and this is the first time. I know there have been plenty of things other people have cited, but this is the first time I genuinely thought that Ben was putting on a really terrible look for himself. This was bad.
Yeah, this was bad.
Because he wouldn't listen. He would not compromise. He wouldn't say, okay, you know what, let's just get rid of Joe. We'll get rid of Cole next week. And I think his problem with Cole is not so much he's a challenge threat, is that it was personal.
He's been talking for like 3 episodes about how he can't stand Cole.
Yeah, he just doesn't like Cole, and he wants him out. And again, this goes to also jury management. You can't just vote someone out on a personal level. If it was completely the fact that Cole is really good at challenges, I can understand that. But it just...
Well, honestly... I think the thing was, I don't think Ashley was mad that Cole was going to be the target. I think she was mad that Joe wasn't the backup.
Because who was the backup?
I think that's what she was mad about.
It didn't make any sense. Why was Dr. Mike even a target? I mean, he is very likable, but he's non-threatening. You know, he's never going to win a challenge. And I don't mean any disrespect to him. I adore him. I like him way more than I thought I was going to like him. But it didn't make sense. Like, the backup is we're going to split votes between Cole and Dr. Mike. I don't know. And it just doesn't make sense because it's not even like Ben and Joe have some secret alliance. Ben don't like Joe either.
Right.
You know?
Ashley comes out right in all of the things that we see her do. I mean, it doesn't result the way she wants it to, but I think in her fight with Joe, I think she looked okay, to be honest. I think in this situation, we saw Joe say what he was trying to do, and then we saw Ben falling exactly into his trap. And the one person that we got to see explain, like, very thoroughly
what he's doing,
was Ashley. So I don't know. I like Ashley's reaction just fine. I mean,
I think
that
she has a pretty decent grasp on the game. She knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Ben's controlling this episode is going to backfire on him.
Well, this isn't the first episode that Ben has controlled.
Right. But I think this is the first time you've really seen other people get aggravated with it.
Well, I think the most damning piece against Ben was when Chrissy confronts him and says, people think you're steamrolling here. And no, I'm not. No, that's wrong. No, they don't.
And on top of that, I don't think Ben was wrong in what he said next, but it was wrong to say it. To say, well, maybe Ashley and you are. Well, okay, sure. Lauren doesn't feel steamrolled, but why would you tell Chrissy that?
No, I agree completely. Along with all of this, while this was going on, Ben tells Dr. Mike to vote for Joe. And Mike doesn't really fall for it. And Mike says, well, this big group of 7 is a big threat. They're all staying together. And I need to send one of these big threats home, is what Mike says right before we head to Tribal. So we'll keep that frame of reference in mind as we head to Tribal.
I was really excited at that point, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. As we get into Tribal, and when Desi is about to walk in, Mike whispers to Joe to follow his lead. Joe kind of has a weird reaction of, what does that mean? We all see Desi walk in and looking great.
Oh, she looked phenomenal.
Watching Devin's jaw drop was funny there. And I always love this. When a girl has been on the island so long and they just have no idea. And then they see her after she's been at Ponderosa for a day or two, and they're just like jaws dropped. I think that's what I just always crack up with that. Joe announces at the beginning of Tribal Council that the healers are not part of this Roundtable Alliance, which I love this name, by the way.
Yeah.
It made me think of Big Brother, by the way.
It does. But Ashley actually mentioned it early in the episode where she said that, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't like Joe, but I'll bring it up at the next Roundtable meeting.
Yeah.
Is what Ashley said early in the episode.
When she said that, I'm like, is there something I don't see? Well,
yeah.
But where are they having these discussions? Where's this table?
As far as the metagame goes, what better name could you have for an alliance?
Exactly.
You know?
Absolutely. And this came up last episode when Ben was defensive about his position in the alliance, and he said, I don't make the decisions. We are the knights at the round table that decide what's going on. So I think this is an interesting little how they're actually using this alliance name.
Mm-hmm.
Mike calls the round table out on being hypocritical and saying, you guys trash Joe's moral character and you guys say that he's awful, but you don't vote him out. So then if I was Joe, thanks, dude. Thanks for being on my side here. And
I was really confused by that. I was like, I don't understand. What is he doing here? Agreed.
And I think Lauren even says, if you want to keep digging your own grave, go for it. But I don't know what you're doing, dude.
Then I'm like, I know what he's doing. So then I thought, like, oh, he's trying to put the focus on him, have them give him the votes. He uses his idol, and then someone else leaves. So that's what I thought.
I think you're right. It all drove me crazy, though.
Absolutely.
It was, and now I understand Randy's word of unnecessary.
Exactly.
Now I get it.
Necessary.
Well, this was the biggest there were lots of fumbles. This was the fumble of all the fumbles. Like, it is so bad. It was an unnecessary, like, unforced error.
Yes, because at the beginning of the episode, Dr. Mike was not on a target. He was not on anyone's radar, and now he is. Mm-hmm. There's no way he's not, because it was an exciting tribal to see the back and forth, because, like I said, Joe is extremely entertaining, and he never faults us. He always brings it 100%. But I was confused by it all. It was a confusing tribal. It was driving me crazy because I didn't know where it was going. And I was hoping that they were going to use all their votes on Mike, and Mike was going to play his idol, and then we were going to see someone else go home. I thought maybe Ben will leave. Because when Mike said to Joe, trust me, I'm like, does he know something I don't? Did he get other people to vote with him? What's going on? I was really excited, only to be let down.
There's something Mike could have done. I think Mike was using a play that's in the book, right? But I think it's not the most updated version of that play. Mike even said in a confessional, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, let's see where it lands. That's the play, Mike. Yeah. Whip out your idol, tell them I'm playing this on one of the healers, and let them try to figure it out, because that will drive them.
Yes.
Well, even just the idea of, they're going to go after Cole. Cole is the biggest challenge threat here. You know that they already don't like him personally. So he's going to be. So why do you need to speak up and maybe make yourself a threat Instead, leave it to the one person that you basically know is going to go home and play it on him.
If he would have played it on
hold on to it and play it for yourself later. Best case scenario for Dr. Mike is to be the last healer standing at the final 8, and then when the 7 sees they need to figure out to get numbers, be that number.
Yes, the best position was Mike. What better place could you be than at the bottom of an alliance with an idol no one knows about?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah,
what? What? You blew it, Mike.
I'm someone who would never use an idol on anyone else. I'm someone who would never tell anybody I had an idol because that idol is only being played on me. I'm the only one that's worth that $1 million. I would never play it on anyone else. I understand why some people do because they need it for numbers. But at the end of the day, you're not that I'm still worth $1 million. I'll figure it out without you.
So then they all go up to vote. After they vote, obviously, Dr. Mike uses his idol on himself.
I was so confused by that.
Very
made
confused.
no sense.
But then we see the vote is 7 for Cole, 2 for Mike, 1 for Ben. So why did Mike vote for Cole?
Well, okay, so Ben did tell Mike to vote for Cole, but if he and Joe were
didn't Ben tell Mike to vote for Joe?
I'm pretty sure it was Joe.
Okay. In any case, like if he and Ben were going to
split the votes because they were afraid if one of them had an idol, they wanted the other to go. That's why he told Mike to vote for Joe.
They were going to split it between Cole and Mike because Joe was off the table. That's what Ashley was pissed off about. So best case scenario is Ben tells Mike to vote for Cole and it adds a vote to that side of the tie. But regardless of what the other side told you, if you and Joe were going to vote for Cole anyway, and you suspect that they're going to split the vote, you're turning the tide in one direction.
The dual action of playing the idol and also voting for Cole made no sense.
No, it made no sense at all.
But as we see Ben voted for Cole and Cole voted for Ben and Chrissy and JP voted for Mike. Thought that was kind of an interesting combination there. So was Cole the right target? I think Cole was the right target here, honestly, for the Roundtable Alliance. With Joe has not performed well in challenges. Yes, he has a little bit more of a game sense to him, but also he's so off-putting that will people really align with him? I don't know.
I think, here's the thing. Some people said, Joe has no chance to win at the end because of Ashley and Chrissy. And I guess maybe Ben. But Desi, Mike, Ryan, they like Joe, So I don't think that Ben is really losing sight on Joe's capability of winning in the end. He just is, because we spoke about this last week. We said, would we bring Joe to the end? I said I wouldn't because I think he could win. I would never bring him to the end. Would you?
No, I'm actually willing to disagree and say that Cole was the wrong move, because if you're looking at Cole and Joe in the finals, I would imagine that people are more willing to vote for somebody that they don't like but took seriously than somebody that they didn't like that much and didn't take that seriously in the game. Plus, Cole would have to win 7 challenges in a row to win out.
That's very fair. I agree.
I don't understand the strategy of voting these guys out at this spot. It doesn't make Desi makes sense. People liked her and she was winning challenges.
Desi was awesome.
If somebody does in fact win out 7 challenges, give it to them. That's fine. But nobody has ever done more than 5. No one.
Was Mike Holloway the one that did 5?
There's 4 or 5 of them that have done 5.
Yeah, I think Mike Holloway's one of them, right?
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So at this point in time, we will talk about where we are in our fantasy draft. Yes, 2 of the people from our fantasy draft are not here, but we will still talk about them anyway, if I can get it to open up. Okay, there we go. Let me know when you guys can see it.
See it.
Okay, so in first, Kim has taken the lead.
I have!
Whoa.
With 107 points with JP, Ashley, Ryan, and Lauren, or as I like to call it, a weasel, a rimmer, a goat, and things like that. And then Mark is in second place with 106 with Ben, Chrissy, and Joe. I'm still hanging in there in third place with 68 points left with Devin. And Saul decided not to show up tonight because his team got eliminated. And
he was crying. He was really
in fourth place with 57 points and a very possible chance of undrafted beating him at some point in time. If Dr. Mike makes it further. Based on tonight's episode, I'm not so sure about that, if Dr. Mike's going to keep making decisions like that. But he is still out there from our undrafted team. So since Saul is not here to eulogize Cole tonight, we'll go ahead and let our guest Doug. What do you have to say for Cole and his time in the game?
It's such a weird eulogy to give because I thought Cole was going to end up with some sort of social redemption, and he didn't. His entire story was being a doofus boyfriend and talking about food every single episode. It's such a goofy place for him to be, but it's a fun place for him to be. So we ended up getting a surprisingly good character out of it that I think we'll look back on and be like, remember that guy Cole? He was really goofy, right? I don't think he ever really stood a chance of winning the game. I don't think he was likable enough. He certainly wasn't strategic enough, but we got an okay run out of him as far as TV show goes.
I would agree with that. He was good in the challenges, as we saw. As he claims himself, he won all of them except for one. Well, now two. And yeah, he did pretty well in the game when it came to challenges. But he definitely needed to work on his social side. Yes, he was the doofus boyfriend that talked about
Oh, I wanted to
I think that's a great way of saying it.
I wanted to talk about something I forgot to mention. When Joe was on the yacht looking for the idol, and then he said he found a clue. It was under the boat. I laughed so hard because it took me back to when he was looking for the first idol, and he thought it was under the boat.
It's like a beautiful unintentional callback.
And that was the first thing I thought of, and I just started. I was hysterical. But I want to say this: the first or second episode, I really thought Cole had game because he helped Joe find that idol. He knew enough to take the clue off the tree. I'm like, this guy's gonna be good. And then I don't know what happened.
Cole pregame had everything going for him.
He
was
really
good looking. He was likable. He seemed to have a good head on his shoulders. He was very athletic in an unconventional way. Like, there was nothing bad to say about him.
With our draft, I got to pick first because I won last season's draft. So when I was deciding my first draft pick, my first two were JP or Cole. Those are because, again, I always pick first one kind of athletic, right? So I went back and forth, and I chose JP. Thankfully, I know he's not a great player. He's not. But I'm happy that I went for JP over Cole because Cole went first in almost all of Randy's drafts.
Yeah, he was the overall average number one. Okay,
I saw it everywhere.
This brings us to my next question that we usually ask. Kim, who was the MVP of the episode, in your opinion?
The MVP. I'm going to give it to Lauren.
Why would you give it to Lauren?
Again, she has a great social game. She was strategic, talking to Ben again. She won the immunity challenge. She is just getting better and better as each episode goes on. I've liked her from the beginning, but she's really got her head in this game. So I'm giving it to Lauren.
What about you, Doug?
I think this is tough because the other word I was wrestling with was incidental, because I think most of the success in this episode was incidental success, right? So like people ended up in a better position, but not on their own actions. And so it was weird. So I think if I'm going just self-contained to this episode, I'll give it to Ben because he got what he wanted out of it. I wouldn't give it to him for long-term success. I think he shot himself in the foot, and if we were going to talk about regrets, Ben should have regrets, but he's the only one who really got what he wanted out of it. It wasn't by his own action, but he got what he wanted.
Yeah. For me, I obviously give it to Dr. Mike. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
I was like, what?
I'm going to give it to Devin. I've given it to Devin quite a few times, I think, this season. But I'm going to give it to Devin. I think he put himself in a good position, as you said, not based on his own like decisions that he made, but I think he handled it well when he was put kind of in a tough position with Ryan's idol that Ben says. I think that he has been building bonds. Everyone seems to want to work with Devin. And I think that's kind of been a theme throughout it, that everyone wants to work with Devin, and a lot of people really trust Devin, and no one's really kind of bringing up anything bad about Devin.
Maybe Devin is the Michelle Fitzgerald position.
If you compare how Devin handled the news that he wasn't crazy about to how Ali handled the news when Rourke was voted out, was very different. The way Ali went about it, she was voted out. Devin took it in. He's thinking about it. He's holding it in. I don't mean like anger, but he told Ben what he wanted to hear. Didn't tell anyone else. Has not confronted Ryan that we saw yet. And I think that Devin is handling it great. I can see. I don't know if he could win. He might. It would really.
I think it's building there, and I think Devin is putting himself in a good spot. But I think with all of these complex relationships that we're seeing and a lot of these interactions, I want to kind of go through a little exercise here that all I want is one word answer. I want one.
I hate these ones.
All I want you to do is say a name.
Okay. Doug.
I want to know who is everyone's number one ally. Who is their number one at this point in time in the game? Because I think we have a lot of that.
Do you mean who they consider their number one, or who's actually best for them?
Who they think is their number one. If they had to pick their ride or die, who is their one person that they're going to pick? So I'll start out kind of easy, and then we'll go through it. You guys can both give your answer as we go through this. Who is Ashley's number one?
JP, I guess.
I was going to say JP.
I'd probably agree with that. And then with that, I think that we can kind of discuss this a little bit. I think that she also has a good bond with Devin.
Yeah, I think we don't have quite enough information.
We had that from the second tribe when they were alone and they were willing to go to rocks together.
Yeah.
I think that was a pretty big bond there, but I think that's hers right there. Who is JP's number one?
Chrissy.
Yeah, Chrissy.
I would say Ashley still from the first one, but I do agree with you guys.
Chrissy or Ashley? Yeah, I don't know. I can't.
He will do what Chrissy tells him. I would agree with that. Who is Chrissy's number one?
Ryan.
I agree with you. I think it's Ryan. Doug, are you there? Did you freeze? Okay, you're still there.
Sorry, I was thinking. I guess. Yeah, I guess it's Ryan.
Are you envisioning Chrissy right now? Is that what you're doing? You shutting your eyes and thinking of her in that bathing suit?
No, thanks. But I was I was going through the Rolodex of everybody out there, and I think, I guess it has to be Ryan.
Yeah, I would agree with you guys there. Who is Ben's number one?
Ben. Oh yes, Ben. I guess if I didn't think about choosing him. So
yes, Lauren.
Ben. But if we have to choose someone else, Lauren.
I think it's Lauren as well. And Lauren's number one?
Ben.
And
I agree. I think they may be the tightest duo. Who is Dr. Mike's number one?
Joe.
Sadly, yeah.
Which is so wrong. It shouldn't be.
No, because he was horrible to him in the beginning.
Well, just even based on external social, political stuff, like it should not be Joe. I don't understand how he's still stuck with Joe.
Because he doesn't really have many options.
Well, he should just stop talking to him. I know Joe is not the person that you would want to do that to, but honestly, if Mike can put himself into a weird South Pacific Cochrane situation, even though that was sort of fake, if he can get into that position where he stops talking to Joe, Joe starts being terrible to him, and everybody defends Mike, if only to argue with Joe, Mike's in an even better spot.
I agree.
I don't get it. It's so weird to me.
But then who is Joe's number one?
I guess Mike.
I don't think Joe really has an ally.
No, I don't think so. Joe's kind of alone.
I think he is too. If anyone, Mike is the only one, just by pure circumstance. I
Yes,
think they're the
Mike, and if Mike wasn't there, maybe Devin.
they're the two that aren't in the 7, really.
Yes,
Who is Ryan's number 1?
Devin. I do think, even though he told Ben, I do think that his number 1 is still Devin. I think it's over Chrissy. No.
I kind of think it's
I
Chrissy.
think it's Chrissy. I think it's Chrissy because I think, and this
Okay,
might annoy
Chrissy
people.
does know about the idol.
Yeah,
I think
she knew before Ryan knew.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Then I'm taking it back, Chrissy. I forgot that Chrissy knew. Chrissy was the first one he told. Okay, Chrissy,
I think
take it back.
I think it's Chrissy for reasons that are irritating. And this is one of the things I don't love about Ryan is I think
The mommy complex.
kind of. I think Ryan is in a great position because Ryan is playing an absolutely incredible meta game. Ryan knows what people look at the game to be, and Ryan is in the best possible archetype. He's in the best possible relationship. This is one of the reasons I would love to see Chrissy win, because Ryan is banking, I think, on the fact that if he sits next to Chrissy, he wins. I think he's expecting that. I think that's what makes Chrissy number 1. And I hope it doesn't work for the sake of Survivor in the future.
I agree with you there. And now I think we get to the last one, which I think is a little bit convoluted, is who is Devin's number 1?
Ryan.
You think so? You think he's still even in this episode?
Yes. I think so. I think he's hurt, but like I said, Ryan will be able to talk to him.
He's got a great relationship with Ashley. He's got a great relationship with Ryan, and he's pretty tight with Ben now. So I think he's had a few, but Ryan probably is still number 1 until we see any action that shows us different.
As of now, I still think it's Ryan. I mean, we need to do this question. I think we should do this question every week just to see if our answers change.
Maybe you'll give it a few weeks, let it sink in, and see if anything changes in a few weeks. I'll bring this back up.
There'll be half of them gone in a few weeks.
We only have a few weeks.
Absolutely, especially since next week, and that brings us to a perfect point on next time on. Next time on is 2-hour episode.
Is it? It's 2 hours. It's not just 2 and 1. Okay.
It is a 2-hour double episode. We will see 2 people go home next week, which is always exciting. And we didn't really get to see too much in the preview, except for it seems like the Round Table Alliance is looking shaky, but obviously that's what they're going to show us because there's nothing else for them to show us.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it looked is that it was Lauren and Ashley were going to Mike and Joe, which is interesting seeing Ashley going to Joe. But it kind of shows that we need to talk to you guys.
I think they're going to flip on Ben.
I could definitely see that.
I definitely think they're going to. I don't see.
But the fact that Lauren's involved makes me not so sure about that.
Yeah, but there's the thing. Ashley's involved. Who else would Ashley go after at this point?
Well, think about what Ashley was saying at this tribal council. I think that you always have to consider the numbers. I think that it was a smart move to try to distract from the numbers, but you always have to consider them. But what Ashley was saying, I think makes so much sense, and I think it's important that we saw it, because I don't buy that group of 7 that's been working together for a couple weeks now, is it? It's not 4 and 3. We've seen Ben and Lauren together forever. We've seen Devin and Ashley together for a while. Like, it's mixed and mingled. I actually think Chrissy might be in a really weird position in that mix. I think Ryan's in sort of a precarious position.
Absolutely. I think the distinction between heroes and hustlers is now gone, but healers are still there.
Yes. Well, and I don't think that's bad. Can I just, for a second?
No.
When Joe did something that annoyed me, and it wasn't a very Joe thing to do, but Joe was talking about how nobody wants to play the game. That drives me crazy. I actually don't think there's anything wrong with a large alliance having a few targets lined up, because the game doesn't stop in that 7-person alliance. They're all still playing, and they can afford to do it because these people are over here.
Absolutely. If I was out there playing, that is 100% the way I'd want to be playing, is to get in a big alliance and basically have 6 to 9 days to work your big alliance to make sure you're in the best you're in the best place in your alliance while easily knocking down these other ones that are not in your group. I think that's a perfectly fine way of playing.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things because it's hard to call out, right? Because you don't want to sit there in that big alliance and say like, no, we're still playing over here. But that's the fact of the matter.
Yeah.
And we don't ever see anyone explain that in confessionals, and I don't know why.
No, I agree completely. It doesn't play the greatest on TV, but you still get $1 million at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. Your goal, if you're on the show, should be one of the most boring winners ever. Like, to be totally honest.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That could be JP. Seriously.
Not rooting for that.
That brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Any last minute comments, or where can they reach you online, Kim?
Oh, I wanted to say a last minute comment about something. Last week we spoke about the vote, and that we spoke that nobody noticed, and I had said, well, maybe they just thought that pros didn't pull out the last name, and then other people said no. Well, that's what it was, because they talked about it.
0 cents.
But that's what it was.
I understand that's what they're saying on Twitter, and that's what people are saying on Twitter. But if they really knew the show, they would know that it doesn't make sense.
Didn't they talk about it in Cole's Ponderosa when he was
I watched that. The only time that makes any sense, I'm not saying that that's not what they thought. I'm just saying they were stupid for thinking that.
Yeah, right. But I'm not saying they weren't stupid for thinking that, but that I knew that's what they had to think.
Yeah.
Because it just didn't make any other sense if they didn't notice there was one less vote. But in the poll, him and Desi talked about that it had to be a vote for Lauren. Right? Was that what they thought?
That's what they said.
Well, so there's a couple circumstances under which I could buy them buying that, but I think the biggest thing is they're trying to sell them on something that's the least chaotic, right? Like, they don't want chaos. So
the majority
I can totally see them chalking it up to Jeff chose not to read a vote because somebody wrote something they shouldn't have, and it wasn't important anyway. And they're going to come up with any justification. Plus, who can actually afford to bring that up aside from Joe? Agreed. No one can actually, Mike can't even afford to bring that up. And no one in the majority who got what they wanted is going to sit there and say like, so let's blow up camp. So I get it.
100% agree with you there.
It's weird we didn't see a confessional about it, but I get
that's
it.
What makes me mad.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see a confessional. And I'm wondering if she's going to play her 2 votes right, because we've never really seen things turn out right. And it's always a flop.
Well, and it's not in the hands. It's not in the hands of somebody who is considered like a constantly on strategic threat. I love Lauren because she's the type of character that I want. She's exactly what I wanted Brett LaBelle to be. Somebody who feels like they're surrounded by idiots and says stuff about it. Lauren is just like this completely normal, down-to-earth, no-nonsense person who's surrounded by insanity. And I love it.
I absolutely agree. I was not a fan of Lauren preseason. Her stuff did not impress me. I didn't really see any of it. And it wasn't until about episode 3 or 4 that I'm like, I kind of like her.
Yeah, but you can only have one. Right? You can only have one. This is why Cody worked, right? This is why Brett LaBelle could have worked better as a character. And I love Brett, but didn't really work.
Well, I agree. Brett's better post-show than he was on the show.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
So, Kim, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Kim_is_board. I'm only a Twitter person, nothing else.
Yeah, don't forget the tricky double underscore.
Yes.
On Kim's name. And Doug, thank you for joining us tonight. Where can people find you online?
You can find me all over the place, but the only place that you'll see Survivor stuff is on my Twitter at IckyBooley. That's ICKYBOOLEY.
And that's in reference to his buff that he is wearing currently, that he was inspired by the green.
Yes, only Survivor fans get it. Trying to explain it to other people is like talking to a wall.
Do you know that I didn't even know what your Twitter handle was? I know I followed you.
Well, it's new.
Yeah,
okay.
I recently changed
Wasn't it Doug Fink before or something?
Doug Watson.
Yeah. Doug Watson. I knew it had Doug in it. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't notice you changed it.
Yeah.
And you can find me online at Randy Knoop. That's RandyKNUP. Unless there's anything else, anyone has anything else to say, that brings us to the end here. And make sure to join us next Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, 10:30 Eastern, where we will be talking about I'm going to call it episode 10 and 11. A double episode where you get to say goodbye to two people. Until next time, thank you.
Bye-bye.